Hi, good morning. So I'll be facilitating this session. I'll start off with a couple of questions that we've accumulated, and then towards the end, I will be happy to take questions either online through the chat group or from the session at all. They can be very specific questions. They can be aimed at the entire panel or one member, whatever's best for all of you. Initially, and I'll put this question to all of you, can you tell us about your journey? What inspired you to make a commitment to the leukodystrophy research and to work with patients and families in your practice? Josh, it's a big question.
Nice to see everybody this morning. So that's a great question. So I thought maybe I knew that I'd have to talk in front of this large crowd today, and so I kind of prepped my answer mentally ahead of time. So as a background, I think for how I got here, I think it's helpful to understand that, and then I can kind of jump into why I moved into working with the leukodystrophy community. So I think the two key reasons I ended up here from kind of a background is that my grandfather was a Presbyterian minister, my father was a Presbyterian minister, and then I went into medicine. So like we have this kind of a history of service and work with people, and there's different ways to do that, and I think the path that I chose was doing it in medicine. So I think that was kind of why I went on this whole path towards medicine and trying to do the right thing for people. The second thing is, as many of you know, I really enjoy challenges, and one of the challenges I like to do is to spend time in the mountains. And I think in a way, what we face in leukodystrophy is a mountain of challenges. And I believe that we have a big task, but when you succeed at this task, even if it's a small success, it means a lot of something for somebody. And so I think that's kind of an important part of my own psyche. Kind of the final reason, so I'll stop talking here in a second, is that I was working as an intern. This is now in the year 2000, and I was taking care of a patient as a brand new medical doctor, and there's a pair of brothers who were admitted to the hospital with leukodystrophy. And I said, oh, like, what do they have? So they said, oh, they have leukodystrophy. I said, oh, what's causing it? So no one knew. I said, how do we take care of it? No one knew. And so the huge gap of what we knew and didn't know kind of irritated me. And I thought, we can do better than this. And then that's kind of what spurred me on to become part of this community. And then there's been multiple steps since then, but those are really kind of I think the three pieces that started me out on this journey.
Same question?
Same question.
All right.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Well, if I'm completely honest, I would have to say coincidence. Because as it usually is in life, things you come across things. And for me, when I started training as a neurologist, I really wanted a research project. And what they offered was stroke, and I found stroke profoundly boring. So I kept looking around, and there was one project that seemed kind of interesting, and that was developing, studying the use of lovastatin in X-linked adrenoleukodystrophy. And well, that project was highly interesting, and that's how I got kind of sucked into it, if you will, and then ended up in pediatric neurology. And I have to say, it's a great field to work in. It's really wonderful. So I'm really happy with this coincidence, but it's not planned or anything.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very glad with the honesty of my colleague on the right, because I cannot say that I was drawn to go into medicine from early on. That's just not true. What I wanted with my life, I was aware of that. Those are two things. One is I wanted to do something meaningful so that my life would matter. And the second thing is I'm drawn to work for people that are easily disregarded in the world. And so when I went into neurology, I like to work for handicapped children, because in the general society, handicapped children are easily looked down on, and that's what I thought. I want to work for them, and if that would not work for me, then I would like to work for the elderly. So I would like to work for something that other people would not volunteer for. And then I like to, I'm sort of natural detective, so I like to figure out stuff. And so in the end, pediatric neurology was wonderful for me because I could sort of, everything came together for me. I could figure out lots of things that were unknown, and at the same time feel that everything I was doing was meaningful, and also that it was helping people that were easily disregarded in society.
Thank you. Dr. Fatemi?
It's on, I think.
Oh, never mind, sorry. Yeah, I'm glad to hear what Marjo and Marc just said, because I just never ever wanted to be a physician. I wanted to be a biochemist, I wanted to be a neuroscientist, and all I cared about was the science. I basically went to medicine thinking I'm going to become a physician and not see patients, but study medicine so I can learn the science, I can learn mostly about the brain. That was the primary interest, molecular biology and so on. And so then I came here for a postdoc after I finished medical school, a research postdoc through Hugo Moser, who took me about 3 weeks after I arrived to this meeting. It was the year when Professor van der Knaap presented the gene for vanishing white matter disease. And so the science was great. It was that first day, and then the family meeting came. And I really think that my sort of, I don't know if I want to call it passion, but my empathy was acquired. And it had really to do with this community. It had to do with the leukodystrophies. So I got stuck with this and then got sucked into it. And I think I acquired empathy rather than going in there, just to be very honest with the Frank. And now I don't know what to do otherwise. So it's kind of like stuck with it. So that's how it is.
Those are some great answers, very circuitous roots here. I'll put this out to all of you once again. What have you learned from patients and/or their families that's really enriched your lives, either personally and or professionally?
I think the thing that's been most striking is, you know, in a way, as physicians, those of us sitting on the stage are fortunate because, unlike other jobs in life, we get to work with a wide range of people, ranging from well-to-do people who live in large large houses on ski slopes, to people who are just kind of living from paycheck to paycheck, trying to get to their doctor's appointments, or dealing with car payments, or having to get rides from friends to get to their appointments. And I think that it's helped me kind of understand for myself in a way that it's what we do with the challenges in life that kind of defines who we are. So I think that I've taken care of families who are immensely grateful, and with even the very little that we sometimes can or can't do, to families and patients and people where there's kind of a sense of entitlement, and then the lack of what we can do is kind of reflected in their attitude with interactions in the world. And so I think seeing how different people carry themselves through life has helped me think, like, who am I as I kind of walk through life, and how do I do this task? So I learned as much from how these families and patients take the challenges that they have and turn them into a good thing or a bad thing. And I think, of course, the medicine and the treatments that we bring is important, but I think seeing how people deal with challenges has been a great learning experience.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm gonna echo mostly what Josh said, but I think as a physician you see horrible things, and I think sometimes it puts things in perspective, like that when you have small adversity, like your flight is cancelled, then you can think of the challenges that some of our patients face. And it's sometimes good to reset. We're all focused on all the small things, the micro things, but for me that helps to look at the bigger picture.
I have a mic. I think we all say sort of the same thing, but I give it the words courage and resilience. What we do in pediatric neurology and in the leukodystrophy field, when we have a new diagnosis, is typically an incredible blow to families. How do you deal with that, and how do you deal with the disease? And when you meet for the second and the third and the fourth time, you see people get back on their feet and cope with it, and I find that incredibly courageous and resilient, and the resilience is for me impressive. And what I also see, because we deal with patients over a very long time, over years, I know some patients for decades, that normal life comes back, and that you can also laugh about things, and I find that impressive. So once I had a burglary at my house, and the police came, and suspected sort of everybody, and also my nice neighbors and my friends and whatever, the cleaning lady. And I was thinking and saying to them, you deal with the worst side of people. I deal with the best side of people. They go for it and recuperate, and that's something that keeps me going. How can I give up if none of you give up? And that's for me something very important.
I very much agree with what you said. I think resilience is what I learned the most from our patients, and it's a major driver of doing what we're doing, because it gives me a reason to think that what we are doing is actually important, and so that's the primary thing I learned, once in a blue moon, when you become a patient yourself or the parent of a patient, you then acknowledge and appreciate all the difficulties that you all go through every day, and makes me very grateful to have the opportunity to be contributing to that part of your lives.
Wonderful, thank you. I'll put this question to any of you, so you don't feel obligated to answer. Is there an emerging technology that you think will have the greatest impact on the future of leukodystrophy treatments or cures? Or technologies, I suppose, Realize there's AI, there's CRISPR's probably not emerging anymore, gene therapy, gene editing.
I can start. Should I start? Yeah. So I think there are several emerging technologies that are really changing the field. The truth is that it is a rapidly changing field. We are in the middle of a revolution, and we may not realize it, because really, about 12, 13 years ago, the testing paradigm changed, and we moved very quickly to, looking for individual genes and fishing around to being able to diagnose many, many new causes for leukodystrophies. If you just look at that, that's been a logarithmic sort of increase. And so that's the first step, and then the second step is to try to come up with therapies. And we are again in the middle of a revolution there, because gene-targeted therapies really in the last 7 to 10 years have ramped up, and we are a little bit on a downgoing hill. There are some challenges that have emerged as a consequence of the first therapies that were developed. One of it is a huge cost associated with these therapies, and the second being that you're entering new territories, seeing things that we just couldn't anticipate in terms of side effects and so on. And then there is the AI, I think, aspect, which made it to the general public about a year ago through ChatGPT, but the truth is that machine learning tools have been used specifically like in neuroimaging for a long time, literally 20, 30 years. It's just that because of the computational improvements, now we can do it at a scale that we couldn't do 5 years ago. So I think that is rapidly changing, allowing us to gather larger, more detailed, much more detailed sort of associations in things, in biological processes that we didn't think of before. And I think that in combination with the gene discovery is really giving us a really logarithmic sort of boost in terms of finding out what the causes are for diseases. The problem is that the therapy is much slower than the discovery side. It's a huge inequilibrium there. It's not the same pace because the therapy requires much more direct patient-centered information acquisition, understanding exactly how fast the disease changes, and there's a lot of regulatory aspects and a lot of costs that go with it. And so that just slows down the whole process.
I think Adi gave a great answer, and for me it's not just one technology, but what is striking is the speed at which we acquire insight in how diseases work. And this insight is conditional for knowing how to smartly attack the disorders. Where are the weak sides of your enemy so that you can know where to target therapy? And that's something that's rapidly changing. So I think for me, there is great hope for the coming years that smart therapies are being developed. So also something different from gene therapy, because for me, that's just, you don't need insight in the disease for gene therapy, actually. But I think there are smarter ways, and perhaps also a combination of therapies. So I think that the field of therapy will change rapidly in the coming 10 years. Yeah.
All right. Another question that comes to mind, there's many in this room, and there's many who should be in this room but aren't because they're still slotted into MS or FTD or something. The diagnostic journey it can be incredibly onerous, and sometimes it's 5 or 6 misdiagnoses, and you look at yourself or a family member and think, there's no way this is that, and yet it's really hard to get referred to specialists, it's really hard to get genetic testing or proper testing. Is there a way you could suggest that we advocate for ourselves or for our loved ones without turning it into an adversarial process? I mean, yelling at your doctor never yields any sort of dividends at all. And yet it's really frustrating to be sent home and said, hey, let's try another drug for MS, and yet, it still hasn't worked, or your child's being told he's autistic and you're seeing all these gait disturbances, et cetera, and go, this doesn't fit what little I know about those. How would you suggest we advocate within the healthcare system to meet our needs without being adversarial and turning every appointment into a conflict?
That's a very difficult question. I don't think that yelling at your doctor is of any benefit for anybody, but it's hard. Yeah.
Well, I think one opportunity, which is maybe less at the individual level, but more as a group level, and I think it relates a little bit to the changes in technology that we've seen, is that newborn screening has been such a game changer in how we find people. I think in the US, it's been a huge change in how we understand adrenoleukodystrophy. I think there's now the technology we're really close. I think we will have a different conversation in the next 5 or 10 years about using genomic sequencing in newborn screening. I think there's a lot of complicated factors there that I'm not going to try and gloss over, but if we're suddenly picking people up from birth where we understand risks, that's going to totally change what we can offer people or what we can kind of counsel about. And I think, as we know, there's trying to help the public at large. Like, we're not the public at large, right? We're like a specialized disease community, but we need to help people understand like how important this is, and that someday they may be facing some challenge where that instead of that they'll be in our shoes, or in our patients, or your shoes really. How do we convince the public? How do we convince the government that this is an important thing to help move the opportunity for diagnosis forward faster for everybody?
Thank you, Josh. That's of course a very important point. But I would like to point out that that policy also comes with major downsides. And one of the major downsides is, for instance, let's say that you find a disease and that in the end the onset is in the 60s. So what does it do to a life to know that there's an impending danger of a disease and then finally it manifests at 60? And so knowledge doesn't come for free. So that's something that I think that we need to think about. It will impact your health insurance, it will impact your life insurance, it will impact your choices for partners, it will impact your getting a mortgage is, I think, sort of impossible when you have an impending disease. So I think it sounds so attractive. We screen everybody, then we know everybody, and we are prepared. But nothing in life comes without downsides, and there are major downsides also that we need to consider.
Yeah, this. No, it's working. Yeah, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I do think it got a lot better over the last years. I think the diagnostic odysseys have become much shorter now, with exome sequencing being routine testing. And I do get the idea that people, at least where I work, that people come to us pretty rapidly these last few years. So I think progress has been made, but of course, more to be done.
I would even wonder the reason that we have twice as many people attending now compared to like 5 years ago. I mean, I'm sure it has to do with the great management of the ULF, but also perhaps because the diagnostic rate is improving. So, it's not that we have more leukodystrophy cases, but that we're just diagnosing them earlier.
I was talking yesterday to a lady, and which is still humbling to me, how some people take years for getting a diagnosis still, and how they are disregarded by their initial doctors. I'm sure your child will be well, you're just worrisome, go home. And so there's also, I think, still some education in medicine to be done to make people aware of all those rare diseases.
Especially in the adults.
Yeah.
Great, then I'll put this question once again to any and all of you. I imagine, particularly in the last few years, you run across patients who are reluctant to participate in research, whether it be a clinical trial or even something as non-invasive as answering questions for a registry. How do you address those concerns that patients bring to you?
Well, I can only speak for my personal encounters, but usually the ALD community and the LBSL community are very, very willing to participate in all kinds of studies. They invest time and effort. The typical follow-up visits last 4 times longer. There's maybe 1 or 2% that doesn't want to participate. So for those disease communities, that is not a problem. Very highly motivated to participate in all kinds of research projects.
What I'm always struck by is that people are also, many families are willing to participate even when they are sure it's not going to help their beloved one. And they do it for the next generation. And I think this unselfishness or this selflessness is impressive and should be an example. And I think the other thing is, what I typically do is take time. So in
Amsterdam, we try to get an autopsy for patients with leukodystrophies because we learn so much from it. And I don't ask it the day before a patient passes away, but I ask it years before. And then I bring it up again. And then, so there's time and there's, no immediate pressure. And that helps a lot for people to make a positive decision.
I think there's different ways we all handle diagnoses, and some of us live that diagnosis to an extreme that maybe is not helpful, and some of us put our head in the sand and ignore everything. Do you have any advice you'd give to families or affected individuals as to how to live their best lives while still living with a diagnosis like a leukodystrophy? Yeah, like, yes, how could you live your best life? You've been given this diagnosis, and as I said, like I know one of the advices we've always had is sort of to find help, continue to treat your child as normally as possible, or your spouses, there's a fine line between ignoring something and then living it 24/7 and it becoming your entire life, and you no longer have any balance to your life. Do you have any advice you might offer to families to how they can find that balance?
To be honest, that would be a better question. You'd better ask people affected by these disorders than us, I think. I'm always struck by how people live their best lives, even with the symptoms they have, and sometimes with the knowledge of what is yet to come. And people are incredibly resilient, and I don't think they need us to live their best lives. We just, can nudge them in the right direction a little bit. But I would ask people that have actually lived through it.
Yeah, I think resilience is critical, and with any chronic disease, paying attention to yourself, to your mental health, is extremely important. I think that we are a society where the expectation is I take a pill in the morning to make me feel better, and the reality is that's only part of the equation. Even if you have a gene-targeted therapy that's going to stop the disease progression or reverse symptoms, if you don't take care of yourself physically and mentally, you're not going to do well. I mean, whether you're sick or a healthy person. And I think this last few years with the COVID pandemic, we have really seen the mental health burden on the general population, on the young individuals specifically, and not giving up, being resilient, being active to the extent that you're able to, trying to live a life is really, really critical.
And I think we can sometimes help a little bit, like show that we are open to talk about it, because I think it's a continuous battle, I think, in families to keep some good life and normal life going. And I have to talk in the microphone, then I hear myself so loudly. And so we as doctors can ask, how are you doing? And I think there are two things that are often helpful. Point out that there are also, for instance, healthy children in the family that need to grow up to be independent and good functional adults, so that they need to also need attention. And that it might sometimes be helpful for spouses to realize that each person has a different way of coping, and that you have to deal with the way of coping of your partner. And so some people want to talk about it all the time, some people never want to talk about it, so find the middle ground, something like that. I do tend to talk about, what the difficulties in life are and how you cope with that.
How would you guys involve patients and their families in the research process to make sure that the research is sort of relevant to them? there a strategy or?
I think you need to make families feel a real part of the project. So you have to ask their opinion, you have to take the opinion seriously, you have to implement the suggestions, or be open for discussions that, like, you can ask for something and suggest something, but there are also downsides to it, and or there are regulations. So I think, for me at least, most important is take them as a serious partner.
Yeah, I think one thing that on the medical scientist side is just trying to convey the sense of excitement that we have about what we're doing. I think that we, I love my job. I love coming in to work most days, and so you know, the sense of excitement about what's being accomplished and what the future can hold is something that I hope that patients and families can get from us, so that they feel invested in the mission of working together on something. It's hard to be along on the journey as a patient. You have your own life to live, but knowing that there's someone out there hopefully working on your behalf, I think is kind of a reassuring thought.
All right, perfect. Listen, I'm happy to take questions either online, put them in the chat, or if there's anyone out there that has a question, I will bring the microphone out to you. And there's microphone stations there and there as well. Yeah, please, does anyone have any questions for our panel? Come on up. Thank you.
How do you get doctors that don't comprehend leukodystrophy to open their mind and willing to learn and jump in that wheelhouse that they just don't have the knowledge, so that they can help these kids in a way that will be beneficial, except it seems like they just want to treat what they know and stay in that wheelhouse versus jumping into a new world of unknown? Like, just getting the doctors to listen, learn, and deep into the research you guys already have. Some of the local doctors, they're not open-minded.
I think for better or worse, there's a wide range of doctors and people out there, and so if you don't have the right partner, then to keep looking. And so that's not very helpful depending on where you live, right, or trying to find that person. But we also, you know, as a doctor, we work with a wide range of other doctors, and you learn who you can work with and who maybe you don't want to work with. And so I think if you're not if it's not the right match, or they're not the right person, don't be afraid to find the right person, or to, that's hard, I'm not sure that's helpful advice, but.
Perhaps I may add something,
Yeah,
because I talked to you yesterday, and there's something I think we can also do from our side, which is like Josh and Ali were also involved with the Vanishing White Matter Consortium. We did a study on diagnosis and management for Vanishing White Matter, and the paper will hopefully be out soon, and it has a diagnosis and management, how do you call that, brieflet, so that we put it online, and then it's referring to the paper which will be published, and it's referring to the Vanishing White Matter Consortium, and says if you have this disease, then you have to take this into account. Like in Vanishing White Matter, it's very important that fever and trauma is considered, and you know, I know that people now are dismissed at the emergency room because the doctors think that they know better. And then they have something to hand over and say, you know, read this, because this is real. So I think from our side, we can be more productive in making recommendations for specific disorders. And perhaps also put them on the ULF website.
Yeah, I was going to say, we are incredibly blessed that we have these great group of doctors. And I get that question not infrequently. You know, I live in Canada, we're a very rural country spread out. It's not. We've got basically 2 centers of excellence within 8 hours of each other and nothing else. But Dr. Bernard and Dr. Van Katesborn in Ontario and Quebec, respectively. and our MSAB and the doctors are really great. I've reached out to them and said, hey, I've got someone in BC or Alberta who's fine to travel across the country once a year to see you, but that's not feasible. And I say, is there anybody you know within 2-hour drive of them? And consistently I'll get back, yes, I went to school with this neurologist, I can tell you, you're probably her first neurology or leukodystrophy patient, but she's willing to learn, and I have a relationship with them, and I'm willing to speak to them. And so I would say reach out to the ULF ambassador program. Give us, like your diagnosis, your address, and I will reach out to people and say, hey, do you know anybody in Fayetteville, Arkansas? We do a great job on the East Coast and the West Coast. The central part of the United States and almost all of Canada, it's pretty sparse. So reach out, and we will do our best to connect you to, as I said, no guarantees you're going to know a lot about leukodystrophies, but it's not too much to ask that they're willing to learn. That's all I've ever looked for. From our, yes, willing to learn is great. They're smart people. And it's unfortunate reality, not everyone is willing to learn. You'd think that would be a prerequisite to getting into med school, but apparently it's not on the MCAT. But that you will find there are lots who are willing to be educated by you. You're always going to be the expert in this, with the exception of going to an LCN or the centers in Amsterdam and Leipzig, et cetera. And that's not too much to ask. So reach out, for any of you, or reach out to us. And we will do our best to connect you to someone who, that can help you get better care within a reasonable distance, so that you're not making the trip, 3 time zones 4 times a year, because that's really hard to do.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And I just ask if you can extend that just a little bit to third world countries, places where there isn't somebody that they can go to, and are you folks generally willing to interact with clinicians in other countries? I mean, do you have time to do that and to help them, help them learn more than just what's on the printed page?
I mean, it's a huge problem, and I've thought about it a fair amount, because it's such a untapped need for patients, but it's a little bit like facing a huge iceberg and not knowing how to make headway past it. And so I acknowledge the problem, but have no insights, I have to admit.
Well, I do loads of second opinions and answer also emails from anybody I don't know. So people can reach out, but of course that also has limits. So that's a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, it's certainly definitely a major challenge. Once again, feel free to reach out. Like I had a person from Northern Ireland reach out to me last fall, and I wound up connecting them to some of the UK doctors, and they flew over and met them. They were, unknown to leukodystrophy, and then was diagnosed. I've talked to people in India and Turkey. They're neurologists we know. They're even crazy more busy than you guys are, who are crazy busy. But at least there's frequently doctors we know who do know leukodystrophies, are fantastic neurologists within Turkey, India, obviously Europe, all over South America. So yeah, happy to sort of try and connect them. Obviously the journey will be more than 2 or 3 hours, as it shouldn't be the case in North America necessarily, but there are doctors available who eventually can get in to see that do know leukodystrophies and are connected to pharma and clinical trials to some extent.
What would be in your opinion, what's the holy grail right now of leukodystrophy research?
I don't think there is such thing.
There's no holy grail. I was going to say that too. I think it's different for every disorder. All disorders are in a different stage, and of course you can say cure, but that's forgive me for saying so. That's also an empty word because there are so many steps between now and cure. You know what the holy grail is? take the next step.
Yeah. The fact that you answered so quickly that there is no answer is really the answer.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the Holy Grail is hope. Having the possibility of a treatment, or you've recognized you have biomarkers, you have, basically the mechanism of disease down. I think when you have that, you have hope. I know as I've said this ad nauseum, when we first came here, we used to get excited about mouse models that were somewhat close to replicating the disease, or we had a rough idea of the protein involved, but no idea what it did. And now we're so much more advanced, and there's so much more industry involved. There's so many more doctors involved. We have all these great centers across the U.S. and Canada. Yeah, I think the Holy Grail is that there's hope once again, possibly for the affected ones, but certainly for future generations. And our kids will be, some of them will be carriers, and that's important. That even if, my son's 27, and what's done is done, and he's got a good life, and he's ironically the happiest of my 3 kids, probably without any question at all. But we still care a great deal about MLC and treatments and cures, which are a long way down the road. Because it's going to continue to affect not just my future generations, but people I've come to know and love, and I don't want them to have to go through. I think Aiden's got a great quality of life, but I'd rather this not be a big part of his life.
I just wanted to follow up maybe on this, because I want to make sure that it's not misunderstood what we were trying to say. The reason it was sort of just a jerk response is that we often worry about people who sort of try to sell the wrong idea. When you are early at the stage of being diagnosed, you're desperate, it's also a very vulnerable point. And unfortunately, I would say that there are some individuals who take advantage of that opportunity and try to sort of sell you the Holy Grail. And I think really it's critical to understand the process of how science works and how clinical trials work, how human experimentation works. And I think it's our duty to really be honest and do our best we can to explain to the community, to the patients, what that process is, and then get them on board, but not at the same time lose the hope that, yes, there is an end to this. This is, again, I mentioned earlier, we are in a revolutionary times with the technologies that we have, and it's not just one, it's multiple. But it's not gonna be a pill you're gonna take tomorrow morning and you'll be done. And if anybody promises you that pill, they're making that up. I think that's the critical thing. It's gotten a little better, but 15 years ago, we had this huge stem cell tourism business. People would go to other countries where there were no regulations, and they would give them stem cells and cure them. And people died as a consequence, and they would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars making these trips. And so I think that's why we need to be careful about, sort of thinking of it and be honest with the process.
It's a great answer. Please.
So what can patients do to assist researchers, clinicians, in moving things forward at a better rate? We keep talking about, there are less than 2% of rare diseases have cures, and things are slow. And so in the process, I think patients have a lot of hope, but I think patients also have a lot of drive to help. And so in your opinion, what can, besides participating in clinical trials, we're willing to do that, what else?
I think a lot of people already do help. I think being member of the ULF helps, and so that there is a community. I think help the ULF find money helps, and sometimes, I always tell my PhD students that there's a nice part of the project in the beginning when you think of the plan
And then at the end, there's also a nice part of the project in which you put everything together and you write papers. That's beautiful, but in the middle is just work. And for instance, I think that natural history studies are very important for therapy development. Also because of, you want to avoid placebo controls as much as possible in trials. And that means filling in the questionnaires and the things for registries are very important, but that's boring and also painful because it confronts you with the fact that it's worse than a year ago or something. And so for us, it's sometimes really difficult to get families fill in the questionnaires for the natural history studies. But the boring work and the painful work in the middle needs to be done. It's critical, yeah.
I think there's I can't remember we all know Dr. Seuss and the Grinch Who Stole Christmas, right? I think, every person in Whoville can bring something, and they just, no matter how small, that piece matters. So we have a family who lives maybe a couple hours south of us in a pretty small town, and they've held a lemonade stand now for the past couple of years. It's a small lemonade stand in a small town. They showed up in clinic one day, handed me a note like a thank you card, and so I opened up, and it's a bunch of $1 and $10 bills, and it was about $1,000. So it was about it was like a stack of dollar bills, and so I'm walking around the hospital worried I'm going to get mugged, with all this money. But so this family, it's their small bit of what they're going to do, so that for them that was raising money for research. For different family, maybe it's speaking at their church or writing their congressman. So I think each of us has a different pathway that we can choose, but don't be afraid to just go for that pathway that you want to take.
Can I make a comment about that question? I'm an ophthalmologist and I work with a lot of other rare conditions. Maybe for all of us who start studying things years ago, they tell us, you don't treat diseases, you treat patients. But for other new trainees, they are seeing a lot of molecular things. Then they forget about the disease, they forget about the patient. You as a patient, I would say, even without the money, you're just telling us, what do you need? What are your challenges every day? Because sometimes we're so excited about these new advances, and for the new people who is coming to the field, could be so exciting that we sometimes forget about what are you facing in your everyday. And someone asked before how you can make the MDs to get engaged and to work with you, but please don't forget to tell us what do you need, what are you facing every day. Because all these advances could take many years. It's not to discourage you, but to develop a new drug could take 20 years or more, and a lot of those efforts will disappear in the process. But helping you in your everyday things is the thing that you need to tell us how to do it. And I would say that's the best thing that you can do for us to keep us connected to the ground, connected to you, connected to what do you need, okay?
I think that's a great point. I think sometimes both clinicians and pharma assume they see the diagnosis and go, oh, I know for MLC, they'll go, oh, epilepsy must be the challenge. Whereas for our family, it would be the problems he has with his fingers and communicating ataxia. So I think it's important to say, yes, we'd love a cure, but in the meantime, how do we best manage the challenges in day-to-day? And that could be urinary function, that could be movement disorders, and there's things we can do that have been out there for decades that can really make the day-to-day much, much more easy on the affected individual and their families. And you're right, you need to communicate that, because I think we often assume wrong. Please.
So I was going to extend the question to what's already at the panel. So I believe the last question was, what can we do to help you guys? Is there a checklist or something that the local hospitals, neurologists, neurosurgeons could have that, for example, if we go under a lumbar puncture, while they're under there, can we gather CSF to send to your all's clinics or whoever's clinic is doing research to help you guys so that you're getting it from the actual patients? And I realize every leukodystrophy is different, But is there something that could potentially be put together for those families that are always in the hospital, always under sedation? So it doesn't necessarily hurt the child, but they can gather data that helps you guys directly from us to help advance and give you more samples.
May I say something? I think that's a great suggestion. And for me, the open communication is most important. Because if you undergo some procedure, ask us. Oh, sorry. Ask us. And I think actually, I think that the ULF is unique in this, that it brings at the ULF meeting everybody together to listen to each other and to understand this. And I would say don't feel afraid to contact the doctor that's working on the disease of your deceased family member and say this and this and this, and can we help you with something? So I think it's not possible to spread, protocols around the world, and it will be end in a drawer or something like that. But I think the communication between the doctors that work on the subject and you guys is would help prevent this problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. I think that all leukodystrophy researchers and all leukodystrophy experts are basically also leukodystrophy researchers are hungry for more samples. So, like any opportunity that comes up, we would appreciate to get samples, whether it's blood, spinal fluid, whether it's more clinical information. And so I think just like Marjo said, staying in contact with the leukodystrophy expert team that is involved in the care and letting them know if things like this pop up would be critical. And so there are currently, for example, in the US, several studies that are ongoing that are focusing on natural history and biospecimen collections. Everybody with a leukodystrophy can participate in. And so, again, reach out, and there will likely be somebody who would be interested. There are some regulatory issues that we have to admit, right? So it may not be as trivial as to just say, okay, well, I'll take this sample and then mail it to you. You may have to sign forms, and there might be restrictions as to where the sample can come from. There are country barriers, privacy laws, and so on, but they are all addressable. And so I think again, being in communication is really critical.
Yeah. And the thing is that privacy, if the family contacts you or me, then the privacy is solved. Because as a family, you're free to contact us. We are not free to contact you. Mm-hmm. And so my email is out there, and I'm sure that other people also feel the same. I'm not working on all disorders, but I feel strongly like contact me, because samples may be wasted if they are available but not ending up in the right place.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I'm sure there's other questions. As I mentioned last night, please take advantage of not just the four up here, but all the other doctors and pharma here. They're incredibly generous with their time and their expertise. So feel free to sit down, ask questions. I know my first visit to the ULF 25 years ago, I got to spend hours with Dr. Knaap, who was invaluable. So please, don't be shy. If you need us to help make a connection, happy to do that. Just seek me out and. Take advantage of this incredible opportunity to speak without a clock ticking in the background for the next appointment, to take advantage of their willingness to help. Thank you.